Start a construction, the initiation of a construction project, and for all critical stages of work, a fall prevention hazard analysis, which we've been talking about, shall be conducted, and then a site-specific fall protection, fall prevention plan prepared as part of the overall site-specific plan. Now, there's all kinds of site-specific, and if it's there, it should be in writing so that everybody knows what that plan is. And where active fall protection is required, because this is one of the things we're going to take a look at, is this plan shall contain an infeasibility outline describing why passive fall protection is not feasible. Now, we're going to talk about passive and active fall protection in a minute, but passive, as the name implies, means that the individual himself doesn't have to do anything. It's like guardrails as an example, rather than a harness and a lanyard that has to be hooked up. We'll get into that in more detail in a moment. Now, scheduling work for safety is another very important thing. Providing safety equipment on the job, such as hard hats, fall protection goggles, and work vests. They should be on the job at the time they're needed, not off somewhere else. They should be in gang boxes, tool boxes, wherever they're needed for the people who need them, which is part of the plan of the means and methods that they're going to use, that they have the proper equipment available at that time. Establishing a liaison among contractors to prevent congestion amongst the trades. Now, this is one of the primary functions of the controlling contractor, general contractor that's out there, because he is the person who needs to ensure that one contractor's work doesn't get in the way of another's, and they don't have the same people, same area, trying to do different things and create a safety hazard. Then providing temporary flooring, safety nets, and scaffold where required. He's the one who probably makes sure, or should make sure that there are the basic safety requirements there on the site. He doesn't put them up necessarily, he doesn't provide them necessarily, but he is there as sort of the last resort to make sure that people are protected. Because, for instance, temporary flooring and safety nets are used by more than one contractor, as is scaffolding. Now, the accident prevention planning identifies hazards that are likely to occur during construction and makes sure that each contractor performing an operation will have the necessary materials and equipment on hand when needed. Now, that means if you decide you're going to use scaffolding, you want that scaffolding there at the time that you need it. Doesn't do you any good if it's there sometime later, or if it isn't there when you need it, because then you either have to change your means and methods of what you're going to do, or you're going to have to stop the work. And I like to put this in here because due to the speed at which construction jobs proceed, time does not allow a single operation to continue long enough to become safe through trial and error. You can't just guess at it. When you start to guess at it, when you don't have a plan, when you don't have a written plan, when people aren't trained in accordance with that plan, site specifically, that's where accidents happen. Pre-phase planning will enable the contractor to anticipate the hazards and develop an appropriate plan to prevent accidents. This is an example of a job hazard analysis form. It's printed by the American National Standards Institute in 810.33-2011. By the way, that outlines in much more detail what we're going through today, and that is a standard that would be good to have available to you when you're taking a look at what took place on a job site. Did we have someone taking a look at an activity in operation? What was the unsafe condition and what was the action of the hazard. And then, once that was down there, we had this activity that we're going to do. For instance, we're going to erect steel as an example, and the unsafe operations or hazard could be falling objects, it could be falling people, it could be collapses, it could be anchor bolts, it could be any one of a number of things which need to be listed as activities. And then the unsafe condition. In other words, if you don't have your proper anchor bolts in your concrete and they pull out, obviously your column tips over. And if your column tips over, then you can have a structural failure and a collapse, and people can get killed. And then the preventative or correction action is, for instance, in the case we just talked about, if you look in subpart R, you will see that there is a requirement that the general contractor give in writing to the steel erector permission to begin steel erection, and that all of the anchor bolts that are in there are in good shape and haven't been bent or removed. That's just one example. Very important piece of paper, should be in anybody's safety plan, so you know what they develop their means and methods on.